One of the greatest threats to hierarchy is people recognizing themselves in one another. Welcome back to the Revolution Resolution. I'm Malaika Tubbs, sociologist, historian, and mother of three. Once we understand how the system divides people, we can begin asking a different question. What becomes possible when people refuse those divisions? What happens when people recognize one another, not despite their differences, but through their shared humanity? To explore that question, I want to tell you a story from Chicago in 1969. At the time, Chicago was one of the most segregated cities in the country. Black communities were facing immense poverty, police brutality, and disinvestment. Puerto Rican communities were experiencing displacement, hunger, and violence tied to redevelopment efforts. Poor white families, many from Appalachia, were also struggling, denied resources, targeted by law enforcement, and trapped in cycles of poverty. These groups had all been taught to see themselves as separate. Different races, different neighborhoods, different identities, different struggles. And for a while, they responded separately, too. The Black Panthers organized survival programs on the West Side. Free breakfasts for children, health clinics, transportation services, food distribution, education programs, and community care. The Young Lords organized similar programs in Puerto Rican neighborhoods: daycare, food access, health services, and community organizing. And the Young Patriots, the group made up largely of poor white migrants, created clothing drives, breakfast programs, and systems for monitoring police violence in their communities. At first, these groups were divided by geography, race, and the stories our country had taught them about one another. But then, something revolutionary happened. They began recognizing that although their experiences were not identical, the system harming them was, and that system was upheld by scarcity, disinvestment, police violence, hierarchy, and the concentration of resources and power in the hands of a few. Instead of continuing to struggle separately, they came together. The Black Panthers, the Young Lords, and the Young Patriots formed what became known as the Rainbow Coalition. And what made this coalition so powerful was not sameness, it was solidarity. People who had been taught to fear one another chose instead to accompany one another. They linked arms across race. They shared meals. They supported each other's communities. They organized together. They dreamed together. And they met people's direct needs together. They did not wait for permission from the government to begin caring for people, nor for national policy to change. If children were hungry, they fed them. If families needed health care, they brought doctors into the community. If people needed clothing, transportation, safety, or support, they worked together to provide it. In Erased, I write about how American patriarchy depends on separation. People are taught to fear difference because division protects the status quo. But coalition building threatens hierarchy because it reveals something powerful. Many of the struggles people experience separately are deeply interconnected. And once people begin recognizing one another fully, the system becomes harder to maintain. This is why the Rainbow Coalition was treated as such a threat. Not because they were causing harm, but because they were proving another way of living was possible. The FBI targeted them through surveillance, harassment, infiltration, and violence. Fred Hampton was assassinated by police in 1969 while sleeping beside his pregnant fiancée. But still, the vision did not disappear because the revolution was never only about one person. It was about people recognizing each other's humanity deeply enough to build something together. And that is the part I want us to hold on to today, in memory of Fred Hampton and his vision. The system survives by convincing people they are too different to belong together, too different to imagine shared futures. But history tells a different story. Again and again, some of the most transformative movements in this country have emerged when ordinary people decided to move toward one another instead of away from one another. Not by erasing their differences, but by recognizing that care, dignity, safety, and humanity should never depend on hierarchy in the first place. So today, I want to leave you with these questions. Who have you been taught to see as fundamentally separate from yourself? Who benefits from you seeing yourself and others this way? What divisions feel normal to you because they were inherited? And what becomes possible when people recognize one another as companions in the work of survival, care, and transformation rather than threats? If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who has helped you imagine community more expansively. And remember, the system depends on disconnection. But every time people choose one another across difference, the revolution continues.